Hello everybody, this is Neil Allen, the creator of the comic series Zatswan Multiversal Guardian, and today I'm going to give you another look at the behind the scenes process that I go about when I'm creating comic pages. Now if you've been looking at Zatswan, you've probably noticed that it has its own sort of unique look. And that is largely to do with me just being a very unique person. I never read, well, no, that's not true. I was going to say I never read any books on how to create comics, but I actually have read some. However, it's a process that I kind of came up with myself and felt my own way around and found out what worked for me. And I continue to make revisions to it. I change things up to see whether I like new things or not. So what I'm going to show you this time is transferring artwork from one piece of paper to another piece of paper. This here is my sketch piece of paper. This is where I do all my problem solving on. The paper is okay. I mean, it's not a high quality paper. It's just regular sketch pad paper, but I'm going to move it to very high quality brush and pencil LuxArchival sanded paper. And what I'm going to do what I'm going to use to do that is a Lightpad. So the reason for that is because when you're doing this sketch work here, you're doing all this type of messy line work. I know you can't really see all of my paper, but there's all kinds of stuff going on here. When you're doing all this messy line work, you don't want, if you can help it, you ideally don't want to do that on a high quality piece of paper. Simply because you're making somewhat of a mess here. We're only going to want to take the lines we want and use those while leaving the lines we don't want. See, like this part of there's hair covering this. Like I'll just take my pen out and do some inking. See, this line here, like his hairline, we're not even going to see that because this like big lock of hair here is going to be blocking it. So it was useful for me to use as a guide while I was figuring out my artwork, but we're not going to need that line. So the reason you don't want to sketching wouldn't even work on LuxArchival paper. Sketching doesn't really work well on sanded paper because it's very, very hard to erase stuff on that paper comparatively. So I'm going to go get my Lightpad and I'm going to show you how this works. Okay, and we're back. Now what you're seeing here is actually my Lightpad. It's used, I'm not sure exactly what the dimensions are for it, but I draw at 11 by 14 inches. That's the size I typically draw at, and this pad is more than big enough to comfortably facilitate that. So here is the sketch paper that I showed you before. We're going to place that down on the pad. And then I am going to take, see, this is 11, the sketch pad paper is 11 by 14 inches. And here is the high quality LuxArchival paper that we're going to transfer to. It is also 11 by 14 inches. So these two pieces of paper are the same size, and I'm just going to line them up totally straight together. Now I'm going to take some of this artist's tape here. And this is just the Blick brand. I got this just because I like the color red. And I'm going to take just a bit of the artist tape and a pair of scissors, And snip, cut a little bit off. We don't want a lot. I'm going to put this on all 4 corners of the paper, just like this, just to make sure. I know you can't see the whole pad just because of the way I have the camera configured, but I'm just going to do this on all 4 sides of the paper. That's one side. Okay, so I have the pieces of paper taped down. So basically I have this LuxArchival sanded paper on top, and underneath this is the sketch piece of paper that all that sketch art was done on, and then the light pads on the bottom. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn, it's when you're using like a light pad or a light box, it's a good idea. I turned the desk lamp off. It's a good idea to have it dark. You don't want a bright light shining on. I'm going to turn the light pad on, and voila. Let me make sure I get it as bright as I can. I think that's okay. That's okay. That's good enough for me to use. So you see how this works? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to trace on top of this, the sketch piece of paper is underneath, and the LuxArchival paper that we're going to want this on for the final piece of artwork is on top. And this light pad makes it so that I can see through the LuxArchival paper and simply trace. Now about this light pad here, this is just a Chinese one that I think I paid something like $35 for on eBay. I think it's called just LED tracing light pad. There are other much better light tables out there, like for $200. I confess I have no idea what using those is like because I've never done it. I wasn't ready to spend that type of money on a light table or light pad without trying a cheaper alternative to see if that worked for me. And so far, this has worked okay for me. This is good enough for me to use. I really don't have any complaints about it. Are the more expensive ones better? I assume they are. But I don't feel like paying that amount of money for a light table or light pad for what I'm doing. This one is working a-okay for me for the time being. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to put in these panel borders here, and I'll show you how that works. Be right back. Okay, I'm back. So what I'm going to do to put in these borders, first I'm going to use this clear ruler. And my tool of choice for doing that is a Posca pen, which is an acrylic paint pen. There's a very fluid acrylic paint in this pen. You have to shake it up a bit to use it. Very unique type of pen if you're not used to using them. I love them a lot. There are a lot of reasons I use Posca pens for this. They're bold, and also I use a lot of wet media in my work. And on this paper, on this particular paper here, it could be kind of difficult to control it. Like, that's one of the great things about like watercolor. It has a mind of its own largely, and depending on the paper you use, it can be kind of hard to control. Just making sure my ruler is lined up straight with my paper. And going back to the watercolor, so like if you're not careful, you could like use watercolor and it could spill outside the panel border, and it could like go where you don't want it. The cool thing about this acrylic paint pen is it will stop that from happening. The water won't pass through the Posca pen. It's kind of difficult to explain. You kind of have to see me do it. Okay. Looks like we Made our first line there. Then move a little over to the side. And we're going to create a gutter here. I'm going to give myself a little more room because this pin is a pretty broad tip. I have these Poscas in a lot of different colors and different sizes, but I like the way that this size flows. I'm going to go over that again. Okay. Now I'm going to lift up. And you see we're creating some borders here. I shouldn't have done it that way. Well, you can't totally see it on the camera, but see, what I was getting at is like I should make all the lines going this way down, and then make all the lines going across, just to make sure that I keep my. It's a way to keep the lines straight, to make sure that they're straight. This process, at least for me, is like more painstaking than it might seem. But I like to get the line straight and, you know, keep them straight. There might be something about this process that I don't know. I think maybe I struggle with this like more than most comic creators. There's probably things about the Force they aren't telling me. And across. Okay, and we're going to do the same thing for this panel here. Across. And lift. Alright. So, yeah, it's important, I think, to get these borders in looking straight. It helps with neatness. And that leads to like more polish in your work. Your work will appear more polished if it appears neater. I used to not like give this enough attention and my work looked messier. And I think, in my opinion, at least, it suffered for it. So now I'm pretty careful about this process. Just, you know, you have to give it its due attention and time. Take your time doing this stuff. Don't rush it. No need to rush. Okay. I'm going to put this one here. Just going across, making our borders, and lift. Okay, you see how this works? So the interesting thing about creating comics is stuff can just take more time than you might think it would. But the trick is just to be patient. Art takes time if you want it to be good. Okay, the interesting thing about these Posca pins too is you have to wait for them to dry. You don't want to like drag a ruler across ink or paint. It's actually paint that hasn't dried yet, because you'll create a very ugly smudge. But I'm just going to take this ruler and move it down, 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 down. Try to keep it as straight as I can to the bottom of that panel right there. Okay, right there. That looks good. I'm going to go across and stop it right there. That looks good. And lift. And there's also, you can't see it on camera, I don't think, but there's one more horizontal line I have to make. So I just moved my ruler down a bit to get that line. I'm going to put it right here. Don't know if you can see it. Doesn't look like you can see it on the camera. So just putting in panel borders, but I actually want to like stress this point. That this is important. You want to take your time doing this. Okay, we're just going to make sure that these dry all the way. It's not going to take forever, but I'm just going to let it sit for maybe like a minute. Okay, so some of these borders, oh, I'm sorry, hit my camera. Some of these borders you can't even see on the camera, so I'm going to get them off camera, but there is this one line here that I want to get that's like splitting this into right along there. I'll get it. Okay, so the reason that we wanted those, we wanted to make sure that these other lines dried is because, again, we have to put the ruler on top of it. And if the paint's not all the way dry, then applying pressure to it, like putting the ruler on top of it and then pressing down, that's just going to cause it to do things we don't want it to do. Alright, so I'm going to split this panel in two here, like so. I kind of cut off AC Cooper's chin a little bit. Oh well. Well, I mean, just a little bit. Oh well. Well, there's no. Oh well. All right. So there's a couple more things I have to do. A couple more borders that you can't see on camera. So I'm just gonna put those in real quick. Okay, I'm back. I've gotten in all the borders. So what happens when I turn the light pad off? It looks like this. And turn the light back on. See, totally clean sheet of LuxArchival is on top. And turn that light desk lamp off. Turn light pad back on, and we can see the sketch pad underneath. Really nifty. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to work on lining this AC Cooper right here, and I'll show you what that looks like. Just making sure I get a good image. Okay, that looks okay. See, as you can see, it's not totally like, it's good enough for me to work with. Had I inked this with like black ink, it probably would have come through better. But this is good enough for me to use. So now we can get to actually working on some of the characters, but I'm going to put my Posca pins away. When you're doing art, I find it's important to stay very, very organized as you can get. So I'll be right back. Okay, so let's get to it. What I'm going to use, you can't see it very well with the way the lighting is set up with the light pad, but I'm going to line my work with a Prismacolor Verithin colored pencils. The Verithins, I find, they seem to be a bit underappreciated. I don't hear too much about them. I think a lot of colored pencil enthusiasts know what they are, but it's the Prismacolor Premier soft core pencils that are much more famous than these ones. The Verithins are known for being a very hard pencil. The Prismacolor Premier soft core pencils are very, very soft, easily blendable. The Verithins are like the opposite of those, very hard, very difficult to blend, but that's not really their purpose. They're mainly used for precision work, fine detail, things like that. When I'm working on this LuxArchival paper, I use them to line my work. They keep a pretty good point. Okay, there's another thing I'm going to do actually. I'm going to want to get a piece of glassine for me to rest my hand on because a couple reasons. First of all, it like keeps the oils from my hand off the paper, and also because this paper is so rough, it can actually be uncomfortable to like rub your hand across it like that. So I'm gonna get a piece of glassine. As I was doing that, I didn't really explain what glassine was. It's this clear filmy paper that resembles tracing paper, but it's not. It has like multiple. See, I'm gonna rest my hand on top of it like this, but just move it to the side. It has multiple uses. One of the uses is what I'm doing with it here, but it's also useful if you're doing pastel art, because soft pastel, and also oil pastel too, it moves around really easily. Like you can smudge it very easily, but you have to rest your hand somewhere. So if you like rest your hand on glassine, you can rest it on top of pastel work without smudging it. Glassine doesn't smudge pastel. That's one of the uses for this filmy paper. Another one is just what I'm using with it. It's also good for storing your art. It keeps like it from smudging if you put like glassine over it. So right now we're just using these Verathins. So you see how this works. It's pretty interesting, isn't it? We're using the Verathins to line the work. If I was using ink, this would be called inking, but we'll just call it lining since I'm using a pencil. Now, I like to keep these Verathins hold a very sharp point good, but this LuxArchival eats up the pencil a lot very quickly. It's actually a good quality of the paper. The Verathin's keeping a pretty good point, but I'm using this sharpener here to sharpen the pencil. I want a very, very, very sharp point to the pencil. So the way I'm lining lately, I do colored line work. So the red areas on the character I'm lining in red, and I used to do just black line work, but I haven't been doing that as much lately as colored line work. I guess I like the colored stuff better. Okay. Alright, so this tesseract is down here. So I was going to, I did talk about the Verathin pencils. They're good. I like them. They're good for their purpose. If you just want to use them as coloring, regular colored pencil duties, you will probably find them a bit lacking. They don't blend well. But if you're just using them for like precision stuff, detail, things like that, they work really well. So what else? I was watching the Fantastic Four cartoon from the 1960s. I used to watch it a lot when I was a kid. It used to come on Cartoon Network, like in the old days of Cartoon Network. I remember the segment it came on was called Power Zone. I'm a big fan of the FF. I like their weird adventures. In this one, Reed bought a meteor from a farmer, and then he was experimenting on it. Like a meteor fell down on the farmer's farm, and Reed bought it from him. I miss action cartoons. I know they still exist in some form, but the scene for action cartoons just isn't what it used to be. I don't know why. I do not know. I'm sure I have looked into that before. You know, it basically, like everything else, comes down to money. People, I guess, just don't feel it's worth making them. They're expensive to make, and they're more expensive to make than like comedy shows like a SpongeBob or whatever. Okay, his hand here is actually in this. There's like energy around it, so I'm gonna line it with red. Even though I usually wouldn't be lining this part with red, I'm gonna do it because it's like surrounded by red energy. And everything's going along pretty smoothly. Another thing that I use a lot is I'm looking for it. Where is it? There you here. My magnifying glass. So, see, now you're actually looking for it. I hope it's not making you dizzy or anything like that. I use this a lot. You know, when you do traditional artwork, you don't have a zoom feature like people who use digital stuff do. So, you know, I just do the old-fashioned thing and get a magnifying glass and pretend I'm Sherlock Holmes. Okay, I think that's all the red we're going to need for this guy here. So I'm going to switch out my red pencil. And I'm going to line his body, I think, with... That color was called poppy red. The next color I'm going to use is this one here, which is peacock blue. I feel a cough coming on, but it's kind of weird. It's not. And like the white parts of his costume, I'm going to pull out my magnifying glass again. The white parts of his costume I'm going to line blue. So yeah, I was talking about action cartoon shows and how they're just missing these days. Well, I don't. They're not missing. I don't want to say that. It's just like they're not as prevalent as they used to be, and I've always preferred them. I mean, over comedy shows. That's why growing up, you know, I was gonna say I like wasn't the biggest fan of Nickelodeon. I mean, I liked it, but the criticism I have always had with it at the time. I know like they got Power Rangers later on. There's a bunch of comedy shows and stuff. But you know, I liked it. It was cool. Okay, we're working on this leg here. I'm just following the lines that I made in the sketch. I'm not like, that's all I'm doing. I'm not even really thinking too much. Well, I am thinking. I am being careful. Okay. I put this down here. This video is going on pretty long. You know, I guess we can try doing a long video and seeing what people think about it. What the heck? I like watching people do artwork because I put it on when I'm doing artwork. So somebody out there might appreciate it, somebody like me who's just sitting down to do their artwork. Okay, this comes across here. And this is his shoe here. Way back there. Let's get his arm in. I might want to sharpen this pencil again. But this is the process that I go through, you know. Okay, if you make a mistake doing this, you can use a kneaded eraser. I don't need to do this really bad, But you know, these like kind of these types of things. I know you can't see very well because of the camera. I'm sorry, because of the lighting. But you know, a kneaded eraser, just get in the shape you want. I didn't really make a mistake, but just to show you, do not use a regular eraser with this type of sanded paper. You'll just create a terrible mess. Just get a kneaded eraser and dab. I'm sorry, I had the magnifying glass in your way. I will get better at, let me show you, sharpening the pencil. I don't recommend sharpening the pencil over your artwork because particles could get on it. Fortunately, if they got on anything, it was on the glassine paper and not like the glassine that I have here and not on the actual work. Yeah, lamenting the loss of action cartoons. Yeah, they still exist. But like those direct-to-video DC movies, those are kind of crappy. I'm sorry, I know I just said that, but I know some people out there like them. They kind of suck. I mean, very rarely are they good. I think the Death of Superman one, like the most recent one that came out, was surprisingly good. And of course, Under the Red Hood is really good too. But man, the ones that are actually good, I think I could count those on one hand and probably not even use all my fingers. You'll be lucky with those things to get something that's just okay-ish. Like maybe that Wonder Woman Bloodlines, was it? Is that Bloodlines, or am I just thinking of the Castlevania game on Genesis or Mega Drive if you prefer? I think it's called Bloodlines. Like, that's okay. Green Lantern First Flight is like okay. I did a review on the Green Lantern Beware My Power, which I was pretty generous to it. I think it kind of sucks. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I say that, but then I say First Flight is okay. And I don't know. They're probably about as good as each other, I guess. Beware My Power might be a little better, probably. I'm putting in I'm using yellow. This is probably a lemon yellow, I'm guessing. Yes, it is. I'm putting in his logo. I mean, they just don't have any, like, character to them. They're, like, soulless. They're just, like, fight scenes. At least that's what they, like. They do those okay, but as far as character and getting you to care about what's going on, I just don't feel it with those things. Not like I did with the Justice League cartoon show from the 2000s. Yeah, I think I'll do this. I mean, the thing I hate about this is like these video files get so big. That's like my complaint. Okay, so I'm going to pull out we're going to want to go up and do his head now. I'm going to get a brown to do his face. I think I'll take this one. This is pumpkin orange. I guess we could use that. The line is head. I'm taking my magnifying glass, and here is an ear. So what do you think of this? Tell me in the comments what you actually think about, you know, the process and hanging out with me as I'm doing Zatswan. Yeah, but those DC movies I was talking about, and action cartoons. Okay, this is pretty delicate work in here on like the nose. I think I did it okay. Yeah, the face, you always want to be pretty careful on this. Going in on the mouth. But again, don't think that like if you make a mistake, especially with this pencil's easier to fix than ink. But even ink, you know, you can fix. I'm getting a black to work on the eyebrows. Yeah, when I made Zatswan, you know, like it's done in the spirit of action cartoon shows from like the 80s and 90s, but with depth. You know, not like stupid or like even kind of dumb ones are fun. Like I'm a big fan of the Mega Man cartoon show from the 1994, and a lot of people like claim it's cheesy, and yeah, it is to a degree. But I mean, good grief, it's a kids cartoon show from 1994. I mean, what are you expecting? Yes, I know there were things like Exo Squad, um, and of course Robotech and Batman the Animated Series. But honestly, those were kind of the exception to the rule. I'm kind of getting his eyes in. Get his eyebrows in. But, I mean, even though that show, like Mega Man, I'll leave it like that for now, I think. We're going to go in, I'm going to line his hair with a blue, probably a blue-violet. Even though Mega Man, yes, it was cheesy and silly, and sometimes the plots were ludicrous. It was still a lot of fun. I mean, I loved the designs. That was so imaginative. The designs of all those cool robot masters and the action was fun. Very colorful. Backgrounds were really great. I love that hand drawn, like those acrylic painted backgrounds that you got in cartoons back then. You know, you don't get that these days. Everything's like digitally done. When that just, I'm not going to say it's, well, I don't like it as much. It just gives you a different effect, a different feel, you know, than the acrylic stuff that was being done way back. Lacks, it doesn't have as much character to me. But this is coming from a guy who acrylic paints and does a lot of traditional art like you're seeing here, so big surprise that I like, you know, traditionally done hand-drawn art more than computers. Not saying it can't, the computer generated artwork can't be good though. That's not, I don't believe that it can. Okay, I think we got this. I could go in and put in his eyeballs. Okay, I'm gonna need a green and a blue. So I already have a blue violet here. I'm going to see, I can't, now honestly I can't see his eyeballs very well through the I'm working at a very small scale here. It's like that I can't see his eyeballs too well on the sketch, so I'm kind of having to just put those in without it. But you know, I'm working on such a small scale. We're gonna just get this AC Cooper lined up and then we're gonna stop. We're almost done because I don't want this video to go on like forever. Okay, I think that we have this. This is a shadow area under his chin, so I'm just going to add something like that down there and take my pumpkin orange and add something like some hatching for now. I think we have our AC Cooper in. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn off my... I think we have him in good enough. I mean, remember, this is only the line work. The coloring is going to bring the character to life much more. I'm going to turn the light pad off and turn the desk light back on to show you what this looks like. And voila! Let me zoom out some. Do you see how clean that looks now? That's like what light pads are useful for. So now we don't have all those ugly, sketchy lines. We have transferred the lines that we want to use to the high quality LuxArchival paper. And that is how this method works. I'm going to cut it off there. You see we have the whole rest of the page to worry about. Let me turn my Lightpad back on. See, another AC Cooper face down here. But I'm going to leave it, leave things right here. I hope you guys enjoyed this art video. I definitely liked making it, and there will be more on the way. Be sure to check out my own comic, Zatswan Multiversal Guardian, at my website, zatswan.com. And feel free to let me know what you think about that, and it would also be a big help if you would share it with others who you think might be interested. I'll see all of you guys very soon. Take care.